I was just, man, wow, I made the big time. I went to Pittsburgh. Anyway, we did that for about 3 years, and then through Norman, I met Gene Carn. Of course, Norman produced Gene, and then I became Gene's music director for 3 years. And then after 3 years with Gene, I met Grover because Grover produced Gene. And then once I joined Grover as his piano player, I stayed with Grover for 10 years and became his music director. And I met really the world opened up once, because everybody loved Grover. So.
Welcome to another edition of Local Legends, Past, Present, and Future on the 50+1 Production Network, sponsored by Perry Jenkins. I'm your guest host, Atlas X. And today, I don't know if we can just say this is a local legend because it's not. This is a legendary music producer, Bill Jolly. Bill, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, my friend. Doing well. That's a great introduction there, man. We have to take you on the road with me everywhere I go.
I'm available. I can make time. Okay, seriously. All right, so we're
gonna do it, man. That's right.
We can talk about
That's
that.
right.
All right. So definitely, it's great to have you on the set. As I just told you off set, I've heard so much about you. I know that you and Perry are longtime friends. All right, and when it comes to the music business and just friends in general. All right. So it's great to have you here down in his studio and to be on his show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Perry and I go way back.
All right. So with that being said, normally when I'm talking to a guest, all right, we have to go back to, we'll call it the origin. All right. So my question to you, because we're going to get right to it. All right. My question to you is, was there anyone who inspired you? How did it all get started with Bill Jolly? As far as, on one hand, we know that you're a music producer. We also know that you play the keyboard, you're the drums. You know what I mean? Where did it start?
Well, the first inspiration for me was I heard, my parents. My mother was a country girl from the South. And so she used to listen to country music all the time. We used to watch Hee Haw and all that kind of stuff. So I was like into country music. My dad was a gospel singer. So they had a quartet group, which is called the Pearly Gates of Chester, and they were like the little brothers of the Dixie Hummingbirds. So I had country music, I had gospel music that I heard from, basically coming out of the womb. But the first thing that really inspired me was the music. I heard this song called Cold Sweat by James Brown.
Okay.
I don't care about your past, that song. And when I heard that as a kid, I just beat on the desk and I would pretend I would be James Brown's drummer. And that song really just said, I want to play music once I heard that. I asked my folks for a drum set, started playing drums, and really kind of the rest of it started from there.
Great. And so once you got your drum set, all right, and started from there, were you ever part of any type of high school band or group or music group, anything in your younger years, as far as being that the drums was the original origin?
Absolutely. Well, we had a band in junior high school. We were called Albatross, which we thought was a beautiful bird, but we learned later it was like describing somebody with a major emotional thing around his neck. That's kind of what it was.
Right.
We had a really good piano player in the band at that time, and I was playing drums. And basically the first tune that we tried to play back then was, the first tune we tried to play was Mr. Magic, ironically. And the second tune the first tune we played live anywhere was Hollywood Swinging, which is kind of ironic too, as I'll tell you later. But that was the beginning of it. And then the piano player left the band because he was much better than we were. He was really a genius, and we really weren't that good. And so by the time we got to high school, I couldn't find a piano player, so I just taught myself how to play. And then at Overbrook High School, which is where I went to, I started playing for the award shows and the local shows at Overbrook. And that's really kind of everything I'm doing is really the same thing I'm doing at Overbrook, was playing behind singers and shows. And I'm really just an extension of that.
Right. Now, when he says that, just playing behind different artists, I mean, that's very modest. I mean, he's worked with legendary people in the business, okay, and we will get to that. So, Bill, now all of a sudden you graduate from the drums, you are playing the keyboard, all right, and I hear you telling us that you're self-taught, playing that. With that being said, When did you, as far as maybe just playing band, maybe get your first break? What would you say was maybe your biggest show before you crossed over? And we'll get to the producer part, but what would you say, was maybe your first, big show, if you recall?
Well, I was playing in a small club downtown. I think it was called Second Off. It was a little jazz club, and maybe there were about 20 people in there. And I was playing. I think I made about $25 that night, playing little standards. But this guy named Norman Connors was in the audience,
Hmm.
and he had a song that was called "You Are My Starship" at the time, and so he came up and asked me if I wanted to go on tour with him. And so I went out on tour with Norman, my
Hmm.
brother and Johnny Croom. The three of us went out on tour with Norman, and we were just excited. We went to Detroit and we went to Pittsburgh. I was just, man, wow! I made the big time. I went to Pittsburgh. Anyway, we did that for about 3 years, and then through Norman, I met Gene Carn. Of course, Norman produced Gene, and then I became Gene's music director for 3 years. And then after 3 years with Gene, I met Grover because Grover produced Gene. And then once I joined Grover as his piano player, I stayed with Grover for 10 years and became his music director. And I met really the world opened up once, because everybody loved Grover. So
And we're
once,
talking about Grover Washington Jr., okay, to
yeah.
be specific. So you had a 10-year run with Grover Washington, per se?
Yeah. I was his piano player and music director. When I first got there were two piano players. It's funny. I just did an interview about the passing of Frankie Beverly, but
Yes.
initially in the band there were two piano players. It was me and the Oriental-looking guy with the glasses from Maze. He and I were the piano players in Grover's band initially, and then he left, and then I kind of took over and became the music director and led the band for the next 7-8 years.
Right. So now
Yeah.
I'm going to say some names, okay?
Okay.
And I remember asking Dave Poe. I know you're familiar with him,
Sure.
right? Okay. One of from that. Let me name some names. Rick Rubin, Dr. Dre, Jimmy Jam, Barry Gordy. If I didn't say it, Quincy Jones. All right. George Martin. All right. So when I name these producers, okay, legendary names, okay, and I consider, you know, Dr. Dre and Quincy Jones, sort of like this, when you think about their different genres of artists they work with, did you look to, how do you see yourself when you think about those producers and David Foster, okay? David Foster, cannot forget about him, okay? So when you think about them, and I'm just going to now narrow it down to three: David Foster, Dr. Dre, and Quincy Jones. Okay, let's just talk about those, and maybe George Martin, okay? Those four. When you compare yourself, just curious, to those producers, what allowed you to then transition to be able to work with the many artists that you have, and how did you develop your producing skills and ear for what you might feel might be a hit or bring the best out of an artist as those legendary producers, Bill?
Well, first of all, comparing myself to them, I'm nowhere near on their level. Let's get that right out of the way. I wish sometimes, when I really sit down and look at it, that you could have the commercial success that they had. But the interesting thing, when I watched David Foster's documentary and when I watched Quincy Jones's
Mm-hmm.
documentary, I felt like I had accomplished nothing musically because when I watched their documentary, except when they went around to interview their families, and you realize these guys been married 4 or 5 times and they were never there for the kids, and I think in a lot of ways I sacrificed a lot of what I was doing for my family to make sure they were okay. So in that way I think I kind of was able to be to win in some ways. But as far as the question you asked about how do I compare kind of what I do to them, um, I think the most important thing, I got a chance to watch Quincy and David Foster in the studio in particular. And the one thing I noticed about both of those guys is that everybody who was in this, particularly Quincy, but even with David, but everybody who was around them, no matter what genre of music you played or where you came from, whether it was a country singer or whether it was Aretha or Ray Charles or whomever it was, or the latest rapper, they all respected him because he could relate to everybody. Like that's one of the things I always tried to do for myself was to just be open-minded. Some people do one genre. You're a hip hop producer or you're a jazz producer or you're whatever it is. But I just try to stay open minded. And I think that's the beauty of where I grew, the way I grew up, because I was listening to all different styles of music. And I said, you know what? That's one of the things Grover said too. He said, music is universal. It's like, whether you're playing a New Orleans funeral or whatever it is you're playing, you just play it with intensity and play with authenticity, and that's kind of the way I look at it. And I think that's what I don't think I'm the best at anything, but if there's one thing I'm good at, is I'm a good Swiss Army knife.
Okay.
You can stick me in any situation, and we're gonna make it through.
All right. Now, with that being said, of course, besides once you left sort of Grover, Washington, who else would you say that maybe when you reflect back in your career, okay, from an artist standpoint, that you say, hey, we really work well together because of that particular person's talent, voice, or just your background and maybe what you were good at? Is there any other art, one or two artists that you would say, hey, yeah, we really hit it off well in the studio?
Well, it's kind of interesting because they stick me with a wide variety of artists,
Hmm.
and I think part of what my success has been, not that I don't think I'm so good at music. I think what happens is I'm good with personalities.
Hmm.
You can stick me with almost anybody, and we're going to be able to get through. And I mean some of the divas, like from Aretha to Patty to
Yeah.
Phyllis Hyman to Teddy Pendergrass um, to whomever. I can go down the line, but a lot of the people who are the people who, if you don't, Kim Burrell, if you don't have your stuff together, they will eat you alive. So you have to really be good with personalities, I think, in this business, and you got to know the music as well.
Right, and that's key, right? Dealing with different personalities. And you talked about award shows, but let me throw one other producer director, music composer, director in there. But Paul Schaefer, all right. What's your, of course, many years with David Letterman. Okay, you know what I mean. What's your thought on Paul Schaefer as far as how would you say, think about what he did? Even though a lot of people just know him for that show, but he definitely had a reputation
Mhm.
outside of that show. Would you compare yourself more like a Paul Schaefer type?
Well, the funny thing about this is that Paul was always one of my heroes.
Ah,
Like, I
okay.
always wanted that gig. I was like, there was a part of me that said, man, I wish I could have this Letterman show. But the interesting thing is, there was another person who was my mentor,
Mm,
who I idolized, and his name was Tommy Bell.
mm.
And Tommy Bell was the third part of Gamble, Huff, and Bell.
Oh,
So if you think of the sound of Philly,
yeah.
Tommy Bell was the guy who did the spinners and the Delphonics and the stylistics, all that really beautiful, lush orchestration.
Mm.
That was Tommy Bell. And he actually became my mentor. We would talk on the phone for 3 hours because he was on the West Coast, and so he taught me an awful lot about orchestrating and just it was just a funny guy. We had very similar personalities. But the story I want to tell is that we did a tribute to Tommy Bell,
Mhm.
and Paul Schaefer and I teamed up to do the tribute to Tommy
Oh
Bell.
yeah.
So, and what happened was Paul was coming from the late night show, and he was coming from New York.
Right.
And so he said, Bill, here's how we're going to do this. And literally what happens, the show came on and we got ready to do the tribute to Tommy Bell. Tommy Bell sitting in front, and and literally we pulled the show off, and they announced him, and um, we pulled off the tribute. And then later he invited me to Letterman show to hang out and see how that whole thing goes down. I was like, that made me even more want to do it, because it was just real. I was like, man, that would be like the greatest gig to have, because he played all kinds of music too. So I related to Paul Schaefer, happened to know him as a friend, and we got a chance to get together to work with my other mentor to produce a tribute for Tommy Bell. So
Wow. So that's tremendous getting a chance to, to work with Paul Schaefer and some other artists.
yeah.
So as far as doing award shows, obviously you've done a lot of those. Is there any particular, I know I saw some video of you with doing something with Chris Tucker, I believe, right? Right.
Yeah,
That was pretty humorous. And also, now was that Chris Tucker? Was the Monique, the one where Monique was host? Was that a different show or was that the same one?
that was a different show.
Okay, different one.
Yeah, it
Okay,
was a different
right.
show.
And tell me about the one with Chris Tucker. What was going on with that?
That was, well, interesting story is that there was a time when I heard about the Marian Anderson Awards,
Yes.
and the one year they honored Quincy and Oprah was there and all those people, and I said, man, I wish I could do that gig. I really would love to do that gig, because the Philadelphia Orchestra was doing that gig. And but just every year it's like, I'll never get that gig. And then one year I get a phone call and they said, look, we're looking to replace the orchestra. Would you like to take over as the music director for the Marian Anderson Awards? I said, are you kidding me? Yeah. So I took over as the music director for the Marian Anderson Awards. That was really cool because in a lot of ways you got a chance to work with a lot of different people. Chris Tucker was there. Of course, we honored everybody from Bon Jovi to Wynton Marsalis to Kool and the Gang.
Mm-hmm.
And that was cool too, doing Kool and the Gang, because before we did the tribute to Kool and the Gang, I mentioned that the first song I ever played on stage was a Kool and the Gang song. But how ironic that was my first song, and here I am now, the music director for Kool and the Gang's tribute.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those moments where you just kind of said that. But I've also been the music director for the Rhythm and Blues Foundation Awards.
Mm-hmm.
There was one particular show, I'll tell you about this one particular show, where I had to literally back up as the artist was so diverse, but I had to back them all up in one day. It was the Whispers, Shaka Khan, Tina Marie, Jerry Butler, Kenny, what's the guy's name? Kenny Lattimore, Wayne Brady, Bill Withers. It was about, I don't know, it was about 6 more artists, but they were all in one show. And so that's kind of going back to what I was saying. It's like you have to be able to get along with these different personalities and pull these things together, But yeah, those are the 2 main ones I've done. I've done the Emmy Awards. I've done the thing I did with Monique was the tribute we did called Teddy 25. It was actually for Teddy Pendergrass at the Kimmel Center. I've done the what is that thing? This at the I can't for the Susan G. Komen for the Cure at the place in D.C. What's it called? The big place in D.C. I can't even think of it.
I know what you're talking about. Yes.
The big place. Anyway.
Right.
But a bunch of different award shows and stuff like
Okay.
that. But that's it.
So let's talk about some artists in industry. All right. We're going to talk about the state of the music industry, and we'll start with Shaka. You talked about Shaka Khan, all right? And also you talked about James Brown. So when we talk about someone from a James Brown to a Shaka Khan, when we talk about Motown, right, and everything that came out of there with Barry Gordy, a Michael Jackson, a Prince, Aretha Franklin, all right, Whitney Houston. So we got that group. Then we talk now about maybe a Jennifer Hudson, a Mariah Carey, Adele. Where do you see the music industry from what it was, and of course when we were in a studio where you had a lot of live bands, instruments, to the transition to more just working with the digital equipment and actually the artist themselves, Bill? Obviously, like a lot of times in sports, they'll say, well, who's the greatest of all time? Is it Wilt? Is it Michael? Is it LeBron James, right? You know what I mean? Or who has the true voice, you know what I mean? Or this or what it may be, or way things are produced and things of that nature, auto-tune and all these other things that are out there. With that being said, where do you see the state of music when it comes to the production of it and, and to the artists? Meaning, how many times are you going to see a Stevie Wonder, a Prince, and Michael Jackson? If you want just to name those 3, just, as an example, all right?
Sure.
And then you have, I'm trying to think of this group. I'll think of it, but they're a legendary group. I'll think of it in a minute. But just with those.
Earth, Wind, Fire,
Earth, Wind, and Fire. Thank you. All right. All right. When you think about those types of groups, all right, and what we have now, what do you feel about the industry as it sits now?
Well, here's the thing. Well, that's a big question. That's a very big question. Well, the first thing is that, there was a time in the 70s and, late 60s to about maybe 82, where it was really about people producing music in a very organic way. Real drummers, real rhythm section, guitar players, strings, horns, the whole bit. I think it was probably the best period of music from about maybe 68 to about 82.
And I got to throw in the Bee Gees and ABBA. Just what I want to throw those 2 groups in there. But go ahead.
Absolutely. When you think about everything from a musical perspective, there were the best of the best to me as far as the music goes. Because you figure you got Miles Davis, you had Santana, you had everything that happened from Woodstock to the rock, Jimi Hendrix. You had all of this stuff happening. The Beatles, everything was happening around that period of time. The stuff that stood the test of time, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, whomever you want to say. And then you even talk about, the beginnings of hip hop and, even through maybe the Lauryn Hill record, and of course all the stuff with Michael and Prince and everything. Like that period of time from a musical standpoint, when you talk about the stuff that Earth, Wind, and Fire did, stuff that the that George Clinton did,
Yes.
or even just groups like the Commodores during that area, or How Players, any of those groups that you could sit there and look at, and Cameo, where it was real bands. Like there's no bands anymore. There's really no bands anymore. It's individual artists, and there are some very creative people. I really like what. I mean, I love what Bruno Mars did, but Bruno Mars is a throwback, kind of to that thing. He pays homage to that. But from that perspective, he really is one of those people that I enjoy personally. But as far as is there going to be another Stevie, another Prince, another Michael, I think there's certain people that just come along like once in a lifetime, and that's kind of what it is.
Right.
And then once, even really like another Luther, even
Right.
Vandross. There's certain people that kind of break the mold, and that's kind of what it is. But today's production, like everything, it evolves.
Right.
So as budgets get smaller, the rhythm section goes away. Everything's done in a keyboard, and it's done with as cheaply as possible. A lot of people are doing it in their living rooms or their basements or whatever, and that's just kind of the evolution of how things happen. I mean, people back in the day were upset about the evolution of the organ.
Right.
Back then, they're like, "What an organ, man!" They look at it like we look at auto tune now, But so I think it's a healthy evolution of everything. For me personally, because I do play music, I hear less music in the music.
Okay. That's interesting.
But then you have people who are keeping it in other genres, like Kirk Franklin. I love the stuff that he does, And so, but you can find what you want, and there is lots of good things that are there. I don't think it is in as much abundance from a musical standpoint as I think it was during that heyday of that organic era, just for me.
Got it. Okay. Well, there's so much we could talk about, all right? And we're going to take a break right now, and we'll be back to local legends, past, present, and future, with the one and only Bill Jolly.
Don't send me to no doctors. They're filling me up with all those pills. I got me a man named Dr. Feelgood. And he takes care of my pain and my ills. Taking care of business. Taking care of business. Taking care of business is really that man's thing. 'Cause after one visit to Dr. Feelgood, you'll understand what feel good is. It the man sure make me feel real good. Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, Dr. Feelgood.
Welcome back to Local Legends, past, present, and future. We now have the legend himself, Perry Jenkins, gospel artist, songwriter. Perry, we've got a special guest in the house tonight with the legendary Bill Jolly. How are you doing tonight, Perry?
I'm doing fine, bro.
Great. Bill, all right, we've been doing a lot of talking about, different artists, people you've worked with, okay? And obviously you and Perry have combined together, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, okay? But Bill, I wanted to know, when we talk about, your favorite instruments, okay, that you play with, and we were just talking about, when I think about Rochelle Farrell, if I think about the newer artist, her, okay, or we talk about people who play the piano, really Ray Charles playing the piano, okay? I know you play both instruments, okay? But tell me, what do you prefer when it comes to playing, say, the piano versus the keyboard? What is your go-to, or what do you feel more comfortable with, and why?
You know, I like them both. I played acoustic piano. I remember one time I was playing the show Ain't Misbehaving, which was all ragtime. It was just acoustic piano, and it was the
Mm.
hardest music I'd ever played. But most of the time I'm orchestrating, you know, and I have to play a lot of parts, so the keyboard or the synthesizer really works with that. Small story, you mentioned Rochelle Farrell. She and I used to play a small club in Atlantic City. We had a group together, just her and I, called Emulator 2. Maybe 20 people a night would come in and see us. They didn't know back then. We weren't. But humble beginnings.
Wow, wow. And you think, what a career Rochelle, we think about Rochelle Farrell herself and what she brought to the table, right?
Sure.
Wow, okay. So with that being said, Perry, let me know, how did you and Bill actually meet? Where did it all start?
Well, we actually met. We were signed to a record label called Pop Art Records in Philadelphia, Group Galaxy,
Mhm.
and I looked Bill up. He had a band called Production Band, and when we was performing, I usually use his band to play behind us in different venues and concerts and stuff.
Great. And Bill, Perry himself, initially, as he mentioned, Galaxy, starting off maybe in that genre before getting to gospel. What was your experience, or what do you remember as far as when you and Perry started working together, and eventually it's evolved to where it's at now. But does anything stand out maybe when you first maybe met Perry and then started working together? Were you at that point, let me rephrase the question. Were you still just playing the drums or keyboard, or were you already producing at the time when you met Perry?
Yeah, I was a keyboardist back then, and they had this song, what was it? It was "I Want Some Scratch." I used to love that. I used to love the song that they had. And back then, and then we kinda connected during the years, and as they started to grow and get into the gospel music, he remembered, and he called out to me and asked me if I could help him with some of the productions and some of the things that he was working on with his own groups and the groups that he produced. So we just kinda, it's been a great relationship, and we've kept, you know, together here for quite a while, you know, and I called him when I needed choir things, when I needed a singer for choir. He worked with me with Pinks.
Right.
And we'll get to that in a minute. So, Perry, as far as with Bill and as far as maybe gospel music, do you recall maybe any particular song, or maybe when you say, "Hey, I think I want to get Bill to maybe produce me or work with me on this"? Do you recall what that might have been, Perry?
What song?
Your song or
So
album at the
many
time
of them.
was it an album that maybe when Bill, as far as when you maybe got Bill to produce or work with you, was there any particular, was it a particular album that maybe where Bill was collabing with you, or was it just going out on a show?
Pretty much everything I did, Bill's fingerprints is on it, and I've been messing with him for 45 years.
Right. So a lot of times, not all the time, okay, but for an example, we'll say that Quincy and Michael on Thriller, okay, that was the ultimate combination there. You've worked with Bill for a long time, but is there any particular album or song, whatever you may say, hey, this is where I think Bill and I did our best work together, anything like that?
Mm. He did a lot of songs I wrote. Well, I would write the songs, and then knowing that I'm going to take it up there to get that music enhanced by him. And see, but we had a relationship was so good. And sometime I went up to his studio. If I wasn't on my best, he would say, "Let's skip it today. Come back tomorrow." And I trusted him for that. Whereas somewhere else, they would just say, "Yo, he on the clock. You can do what you want. Keep going."
Well, now, but with that being said, okay, initially, obviously, Bill, of course, you know this. I mean, Perry, you weren't at that time, I assume, were you working with your brothers, right? I mean, you sung with your brothers, okay,
Mhm.
right? Eventually, you did some solo stuff. So, Bill, did you produce Perry and his brothers for a while before maybe just working with Perry individually? Is that how it started?
Well, Perry was mostly, he knew what he wanted, so he was really the producer. He'd come to me for arrangements. You know, I just kinda looked to him and said, "What you want, man?" And or if I did something, I'll get it to him, and he'd say, "I like it, I don't like it," or whatever. So, really, I just kinda looked to his direction.
Are there any particular show, or if you guys ever did anything that maybe stand out to you, Perry? Like, hey, I remember that time you were, whether it was New York or you could have been in L.A. Anything stand out as far as a moment with you and Bill?
Oh yeah, one time we did a concert. It was Unity Day in Camden, and I had Bill, uh, Larry on bass, and the other boy on keyboard on drums. It was 4 pieces. It was supposed to been like 5 pieces. Supposed to been 2 keyboard players. One keyboard player didn't show up for practice for like 2 days, so we was down there. So I remember Bill said, "Should I prepare to do the show by myself?" I said, "Yeah." So at this time on DAS, they had the juice machine. So we showed up at the park. It must have been about 7,000-8,000 people there, and the record company, for the owner, he didn't. Well, he heard us on about we was gonna be over there on the radio, but we didn't know he was coming over there. And we got out there. And then Bill had this vocoder,
Mm-hmm.
a vocoder, and it was like a juice machine was making money. I'm making noise like a space machine, and they was giving away money on the radio. So before we came out, the singers, me and my brothers and Harold, he kicked that off, and then every place went wild up. And I said, "You hear this guy out here, man?" And people was hollering. The guy from the record label was there looking, saying, "Wow," because he ain't never seen us. He ain't know nothing about the band, our live performance and stuff. And then that was just one of them concerts. You after it was over, you knew it went very well, very well.
Great,
The
great.
place up.
Now, so from Camden, Bill, what I want to ask you, okay, is that obviously you've worked with a lot of artists, okay, and you were telling me in between breaks that, as far as you have traveled internationally, okay. So, Bill, when you think about some of the shows that you have been on with male or female artists, what are some of maybe the top shows as far as attendance and maybe artists that you've worked with on big shows at stadiums? Any particular artists come to mind, Bill?
Oh yeah. Well, I was working with Michael Bublé. He was playing stadiums. I think Perry, you did that with
Yeah.
me too, right? And Celine Dion. Did you do Celine? I don't know if you
Yeah.
did. Oh, you did Celine. I did Celine Dion, and of course just finished with Pink. One of the biggest shows that I ever played was my first show with Grover. We were actually in Philadelphia, at the Art Museum, all the way, and it was Grover in Chicago.
Mm.
And there were people everywhere. I mean, from the Art Museum down to City Hall. But I've seen some really massive audiences and places. I've seen a lot, so it's been a real blessing.
Now, speaking of seeing a lot, you were just telling me that you recently, within the last 10 years, you've had a chance to really travel internationally. Okay. As far as the traveling, have any of these been performances as far as you musically? And if so, is there any particular country or any place, location that you stands out as like, hey, we really had a good time or you really like that?
Oh God, so much. Well, first of all, let me tell you about the travel. About 10 years ago, every year I write a list of things I want to do. In this one particular year, I wrote I want to be able to travel the world without having to worry about money. That's what I wrote on my list. And so this thing came out from Hyatt called the Big Welcome, where they were giving away 365 nights at any Hyatt around the world, 1,000,000 airline miles, a check for $50,000 to the one person who would come up with the best idea, a video about what they do if they won the contest. So I asked them, they said you could not use music. I emailed them, said, "Can I use music if it's my own music?" Because I knew it would be a copyright thing. They said, "Yeah, you can." So I went to Toys R Us, and I bought like 3 musician puppets and a toy monkey and a toy airplane, and I created this video where basically the musicians sang the song that I wrote with the monkey, and they traveled to the Hyatts around the world, and I had a black shirt, black gloves, and long story short, I won this contest. So from winning that contest, I got to see all 7 wonders of the world. I've conquered my 4 biggest fears in life, and got a chance to see just some of the most amazing things that you could ever see. But it all started from writing down, I want to be able to travel the world without having to worry about money.
Wow. So, with that being said, because we know we have a lot of people listening right now, and this is truly a legend that we have right here on the set right now. Bill, if you were giving advice, like I said, we were talking about from Quincy Jones to Rick Rubin to, say, Dr. Dre, David Foster, and Barry Gordy, and so forth. And I'm going to throw in there Timberland, Pharrell. We have other Jimmy Jam. For someone who is an aspiring, and we do have, once again, other producers, out there, across the board, but is there any particular advice that you might want to give if you're saying if it's for that aspiring young producer who's looking to maybe hone their skills and maybe trying to identify where they may want to target or work? Any particular advice that you would give?
Well, if a producer is what you want to be, then the most important thing is I think to understand who you are, like what kind of music you do. Quincy does a little bit of everything. Rick Rubin is, you know, rock but he does Johnny Cash, just like figure out what you do and then learn that and then learn the technology behind that. And number three, also learn the personalities because producers are really psychiatrists. We're psychiatrists. Our job is to get the best out of the artist, which means we have to understand two real things: their egos and their insecurities. You have to mold yourself around those things to get the best out of this human being who is, a genius. But they're not going to give you anything if you don't relate to them in a proper way.
So let's go back to Rick Rubin for a second, because Rick Rubin, on one hand, we've got the Beastie Boys, okay? And we also have LL Cool J, all right? But the merger of Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons with regards to Def Jam Records, was that ahead of his time with regards to the sound? I mean, when you think about with Rick collaborating and bringing what he brought to the table, any thoughts on that combination with regards to entering into the hip hop? When we think, because hip hop, for those who don't know, and we could go all the way back to African Bambaataa, Cold Crush Brothers, and so forth. But with that being said, James Brown was been sampled. Ask Eric B. and Rakim, all right, has been sampled many times in hip hop. And then all of a sudden you have someone like Rick Rubin coming in, okay, with his sound, and he produced even up to more recently with Jay-Z coming back and working with Rick. But what are your thoughts about Rick Rubin's sound in hip hop versus some of the other artists? I mean, other genres of music.
Well, I really like Rick Rubin as a producer. I particularly like that License to Ill record from the Beastie Boys. That was a great record, but he took this real radical, energetic, passionate approach to the music, which I loved. And so he's one of my favorite ones. And then when you talk to him now and or see some of the things he's done or the stuff he produced with Johnny Cash, which is the total opposite.
Right.
It was just very simple with guitar and just capturing the essence, but it changed Johnny Cash's career. So I like him because he's not afraid to tackle the difficult stuff and to do it in a way where it's like groundbreaking and different.
Got it. All right. So tonight here in Perry's studio, we have his partner Jesse right now behind camera. All right. We've got Perry right here. And, I was asking you about international travel, and Jesse discovered an artist by the name of Liz. All right. So we just want to say hello to Liz tonight. All right. Liz. And of course, Perry and Jesse combined together to work with Liz. All right. And going there from there. What are your thoughts on Liz? She was known as the Mariah Carey over in the Philippines. All right, from there. Any thought on Liz? I know you've had a chance to meet her of more recently. Okay, and matter of fact, I'm not sure. I think maybe the first time you working with Liz was in Harrisburg. All right, maybe for a particular show that you did more recently up there. So just give me your thoughts on that. And Perry, what made you think about bringing Liz? Obviously, you got the legendary Bill Jolly working with you, but how did you maybe collab a little bit with that?
Well, Jesse brought Liz music to me. And I think he said he met her when he was over in Japan, and they became friends. And then when she was decided she wanted to do her own project, she got in touch with him, and he brought it to me, asked me, is this something I would want to produce? She had a particular song on her project called You Are My Friend, which sounds like a gospel song to me. So I said, yeah, this is something I would like to do. So we worked on writing some music for her, me, George, and Dave Poe, and George McKnight. With a song before she even came over here. And so when she came over here, she recorded this song. But we did most of the recording of her project at Bill's studio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She's a great writer too. Most of her songs on her project she wrote herself. When we got over here, we redid them. I add background to them and different things. We changed it up a little bit. Yeah.
Got it. And Bill, you've had a chance to work with her. And before we talk about Eliz a little bit more, um, when you think about female artists or just artists in general, uh, what are some of the biggest concerts maybe that you've been involved with when it comes to artists?
Mm. Well, first of all, Liz is wonderful. I got a chance to work with her on her project, which was really cool. I got a chance to work with her live in Harrisburg on her
Yes.
project as the music director, and of course, Liz was part of the choir with me with Pink as well. So I think she's wonderful. She's a great talent, great personality, just a person who deserves to win. She's just cool like that. I love her spirit and her personality. That I love that better than her talent. She's just a good person. Some of the biggest shows I've worked on. One of the biggest ones I did was the Radio 1 25th anniversary of Radio 1. That was for Kathy Hughes, but Beyonce was the headliner. I was the house band. Everybody was on that gig. T.D. Jakes, Jay-Z, I said Janet Jackson, Yolanda Adams. Everybody was on that particular gig, and that was a pretty big one. Um, but there have been so many performances that I could think of. I got a chance to play Carnegie Hall once. That was really cool. Um, um, but yeah, I mean, it's probably been too many to even just remember them all. But just lots of blessings, you know.
Okay. And so now let's talk about Pink because once again, in this case, Perry, you've had an opportunity, like you said, at Lincoln Financial Field to work with the artist Pink, all right? And Perry was brought in along with some other gospel artists to do background on a particular song, and Liz actually got a chance to participate in that. So Lincoln Financial Field, for those who just don't know, that's the stadium where the Philadelphia Eagles play. Probably holds maybe some 50 to 60,000 maybe people, all right? And I'm pretty sure Pink sold it out. Tell us about that production right there as far as with Pink, and was there any particular reason, if you know, Bill, why she wanted a gospel artist? And obviously Perry was one of those.
Well, she had a song called "I Am Here," which was written by a guy named Billy Mann. Um, Billy Mann was a friend of mine many, 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 many years ago. Actually, Billy was living in his car in Philadelphia. Um, and I used to encourage him back then and tell him, "Hey, man, listen, it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be cool, man. Listen, you're going to make it." And, I was just really just supportive of him back then. I even gave him some work. And next thing I know, Billy goes away and moves to New York, and he becomes this big star, big producer, big writer, and he's working with everybody from Kelly Rowland on down to, I mean, everybody. He's working with everybody, and he's been working with Pink. And next time I meet him, we meet at the Four Seasons, and he says, I've got this song called "I Am Here." I'm going to join Pink. We want to use a gospel choir, so we want to use your choir. Can you pull together the singers? And I pulled together Perry and a bunch of other people, and we did the recording for that. And so this time was a time where they said, listen, we're coming to Philly. We want to bring the choir together and have the choir perform with us at Lincoln Financial Field. So that's basically how it happened. We're supposed to be doing another one, Hershey Park, actually coming up soon too as well with her. So that's basically how it all kind of came together.
Wow, that sounds tremendous. And Perry, how did you feel about that show? I know Liz had a chance to also participate on that show with you, but when you think about that with Pink, is that maybe one of the biggest uh, stadiums or anything as far as performing for artists? I know you have a history with Pink also, and how did that start, Perry?
No, the history with Pink that I have came off with him. I mean, in 2017, we was in the studio with her to record that same song that he said she won a Grammy for the song, and that's how I met her. And this is my connect.
Oh, but you're telling us right now though it actually started back in 2017 with
Yeah.
Pink back then. Okay,
Right.
so from that point, and was several gospel artists back in the studio at that time? Performing. As far as when you were originally putting the track
Yeah.
together.
Right,
Okay.
same ones.
Okay,
Yeah.
same ones. All right, so now here we are now years later, okay, and we're doing a live performance
Right.
with that. Okay, so that's great. And how do you feel about that, Perry, as far as, is that sort of one of the biggest productions you've been with as far as with Pink?
Yeah, it's the biggest production I've been with Pink or without Pink.
Okay. Great, great, great. Yeah, it's great. So Perry, with that being said, like I asked Bill earlier a little bit about, the state of music, what he feels in the industry right now. Obviously, you're a gospel artist, but you work closely with Bill. What's your feeling right now when you think about just what you're seeing musically right now going on in the industry versus maybe back in the day versus now? How do you feel about what's happening these days?
Well, back in the day, it was a lot of bands, a lot of groups. Well, you don't have that right now. You have mostly single artists now, soloists, the guys and girls, a solo singer with some dancers behind them. But when we was coming up, there was a ton of bands, local ones, good, and they had battles that made them good.
Is- And so when you speak about some solo artists, like some people talk about, Bill mentioned Bruno Mars, but we also have Chris Brown, right? And as far as what he's doing, okay, Usher, all right, just to name some artists. But from a female artist standpoint, pair or male or female, are there any particular gospel artists that you look at today, compared to some of the artists back in the day, from Yolanda Adams back, using her, or Mary? Well, not that Mary was back in the day, but of course one of my favorite songs is by the Clark sisters. But when you think about the generation of gospel artists to where they are now, so anyone that stands out now that you say, hey, this art, this gospel artist really, is doing what he really needs to do, he or she.
Um, yeah, it's quite a few. You got some of the main ones that always win all the awards and stuff, like Yolanda and Fred Hammond and all them types of guys. But Fred Hammond, he was with Commission, and well, he the one who got me really to turn my head to gospel. So one day they was over playing in Philly doing a concert on Unity Day, and my wife went over there. She was in church and I wasn't, and she heard them. So she bought one of their CDs and brought it back home. And she said, "Here, you'll like this because it sound like R&B." Yeah, okay, I put them in. They were slamming. She's right. I liked it. But as I start listening and listening to the song, listen to the music first, then I start listening to the words start ministering to me. And I'm saying, wow. So I think I was in middle 30s by then, and I always looked at the record business. If you ain't made it, got a deal or something about early, 'cause I know they always cater to the younger people. They want, I said, I always stopped trying to get a deal. So when I heard them, by what I seen in gospel, there was no age limit. Everybody's making records, 60, 70 years old, I said, I could do this. So in 1999, I wrote the songs. I was going to be a single gospel artist. My brothers and them came and said, yeah, we'd like to back you up. That's when I created the group Perry Jenkins and the Lord's Mercenaries, and we put our first CD out. Bill was a major part of that. I wrote most of all the songs on there, and it was flying ever since then. It was great. Yeah.
Great. And Bill, obviously you've collaborated. You and Perry have had a relationship for, quite some time. Bill, have you ever sometimes maybe, of course, I would think, let me ask you this question, as sometimes maybe when you're composing tracks, you know what I mean? Have you pretty much just maybe just sold some of your music to any particular artist? Like sometime are you in the studio, you may say, oh, I think this is something like a Patti LaBelle, or I think this is something like a Jennifer Hudson. Any particular times you maybe just been working on something and then just said, I think I've got something. Let me contact this particular artist to see if they're interested in anything like that.
Well, it's interesting. There was a guy who I was working with in the studio who was not really a great singer. He was a songwriter, and he and I had been working together for, I don't know, 25 years.
Mhm.
But he came and he had this one song, and it was a gospel song. And I said, there's something about this song that's really, really good. And he said, okay, what do you think? I said, you should develop this. So we got a demo singer, and we got it on Kurt Franklin's channel. And he played it once. And he said, oh, man, I want to do something else with this song. And his name is Anthony Leonard. And he said, can you try to get it to somebody? Well, I had a friend who knew Shirley Caesar, and Shirley Caesar was in North Carolina. I arranged a meeting for him to meet Shirley Caesar to play the song. Now, Anthony is Caucasian, and so he walked in, he met with Shirley Caesar, and anyway, he and Shirley hit it off. Long story short, I get a call to come in, and we're producing this song on Shirley Caesar, and Shirley is singing a duet with him.
Okay.
He's not a great singer, but it's coming out this year. So, again, you never know. You never know.
And that's right. You never know sometimes who you may meet. I think Liz, the artist that Jesse and Perry are working with right now. Perry, I know we were talking about this. Considering, Bill, I think you know a lot about Liz, from her starting off over in the Philippines to getting on the Wish bus out over there, and also out in LA. And really, for those of you listening right now, I mean, sometimes it takes some artists years to establish themselves. Other times, of course, if you're discovered by an artist to get in there, that can fast track you. And I must say that Liz has had an opportunity to be around some really talented people. Obviously, the fact that Bill, between working with Perry and then having an opportunity to sort of share the stage with you, as her artist, has really given her a lot of, exposure. So, you never know, like you're saying right there.
That's right.
So from that standpoint, just curious, Bill, Perry, as we get ready to wrap up this episode, any talk between you two, Perry, any new songs, any potential collaborations? You and Bill talking about anything behind the scenes or anything?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put out a solo project myself, and he is definitely gonna be on it.
All right, so you got something in the works, Perry?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, Bill, once again, like, even though this is local legends, past, present, and future, you are international. You're well known, okay? You're more than just a local legend, okay? But it did start in Philadelphia, right? Okay, right? You went to Overbrook High School, all right? So that's the origins of where it all started. It's really been great on having you here tonight, all right? We look forward to seeing what else you do. And I know you were saying that, you still have some additional work to do with Pink, coming up. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be really great. But Bill, I do need to go back and ask you one other question. All right. All right. And I'm going to you talked about Woodstock. All right. But then, do you recall the one with Questlove? He did a documentary on what was sort of considered the Black Woodstock. All right. Just want to get your thoughts, when you think about some of the artists, that maybe were performing on that particular, one, because that footage had been lost. Or, well, I'm going to say, not that it was lost, it was in a guy's garage for a long time, and then eventually he brought it to Questlove. Okay. Nina Simone was one of the people on that particular show. All right, along to, just want to know your thoughts, if any, on that when that production, took place.
Well, that film was called Summer of Soul.
Yes, Summer of Soul.
And the interesting thing is that and on that show was Sly and the Family Stone, David Ruffin, the Fifth Dimension. You mentioned Nina Simone. I have a Nina Simone story. I did a tribute to Nina Simone with Nina in the audience. I was never so nervous in my life. Jill Scott and I actually did the tribute to Nina Simone. And Questlove and I used to play with his dad's group. His dad was a doo-wop singer named Lee Andrews in the Hearts. And that's Questlove's father. And so Questlove, myself, my brother, and his sister and his mother were the Lee Andrews. We used to play little clubs on 52nd Street in Philly. This was back before. And he used to come to my basement to do his initial Roots demos. He and Tariq used to come and do demos, to really kind of, when they first started the Roots. So we go way back. We go way, way back. And so, but listen, it was a great thing. That was a great performance and a great job that he did. Of course, he won the Oscar for that. And
Yes.
most people don't know, because that was when Will did the slap-a-thon.
Oh, we'll never forget that.
But
yeah, that definitely overshadowed Will Packer
Yeah.
producing that, and we get that whole incident.
yeah, but all great music, and I have much respect for him and for everybody who's going back and reaching back and taking good music and bringing it back. That's cool.
Well, that sums it up right there. Like I said, this is more than just a local legend. This is the legendary Bill Jolly. You've had a chance to hear it yourself. For the artists that he's had a chance to work with in different generations or different decades, let me say that. So, Bill, it's been great having you here tonight
Thank you. Been my pleasure.
on the show. We look forward to seeing more production from you, and we also look forward to seeing what you and Perry may come out of the studio with sometime in the near future. So thanks a lot. And this has been another edition of Local Legends, past, present, and future. See you next time.
Okay, that's going to be a house scene right now. But we worry about those scenes. Okay, I'm just saying.
And I'm saying.
I'm just saying. Come out of here on the floor. Honey, let's rock some more now. Come out of here on the floor. Honey, let's rock some more, yeah. Now when you get out here, don't you have no fear. Put your hand on your hip and let your backbone slip. Better work out. Oh, my mama move.
When they go, let me ask you. Ooh.